everyone, welcome back to today's video. Today we're going to be making a crochet ribbed sweater, and these are the materials in front of you. We're going to be needing any color that you guys prefer to use. I'm going to be using the Red Heart Super Saver in the color medium thyme. And for this one, I'm going to be using a number 4 crochet hook. Some scissors, a yarn needle, and some stitch markers will be necessary. Let's begin. Okay, so to start off, we're going to create a slip knot. And for this video, I'm going to be making a size medium. So I'll be leaving all the sizes and everything, specific numbers in the description box. For the medium, you're going to be chaining 82. So make sure to make your chains very loose, because this is what our sweater is going to start off from, and it's going to go horizontally and not vertically, because our design is going to be looking upwards and not to the side. I'll meet you back when I have my 82 chains completed. Okay, so now that you're done with your 82 chains, or how many chains you are making, we are going to double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. To double crochet, we are going to yarn over, count down our chains, 1, 2, 3, and into that 3rd chain, we're going to stick our hook through, yarn over, and pull up a loop. You should have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. And that's how you make a double crochet. Double crochet into all the chains until the very last chain, to complete the whole row. Okay, so this is what your double crochets chains should finally look like. You should have 80 stitches after completing the chains. Now we're going to do our 2nd row. So turn and then chain 1. We're going to back loop slip stitch into all the stitches until the last stitch of the row. To back loop slip stitch, you're going to go into the back loop of each stitch. So right here, and then we're going to take our yarn, pull up a loop, and take this first loop and pull it through the 2nd one. That's how you make a slip stitch. And then you're going to slip stitch into all the stitches until the last stitch of the row. Okay, so this is what your slip stitch row should look like. After you have hit the last stitch of the row, we're going to slip stitch into it instead of doing the back loop slip stitch as we were doing before. To start row 3, turn and chain 1. We're going to do the same thing and back loop slip stitch into all the stitches until the last stitch of the row. Try to keep your slip stitches loose so that it's easier to get into them, so that they're not so tight. Okay, so this is what your 3rd slip stitch row should look like. Now we're going to slip stitch into the last stitch of the row. Turn, and this is going to be our last slip stitch row. So chain 1, turn and chain 1, and then slip stitch into all the stitches until the last stitch of the row. Okay, so this is going to be our last row. Once you've hit the last stitch, just slip stitch into it, and then turn and chain up 2. Bring the back loop, double crochet into the slip stitches. So back loop, and then double crochet into it. And you're going to keep repeating the back loop, double crochets until you have your assigned length, assigned row. So for the medium row, you're supposed to crochet into the 101th row for your width, and it's going to look like this vertically instead of horizontally. I'll meet you guys back when I have this back panel complete. Now that you have Okay, so I left a really long tail of yarn, and I accidentally said this side, but I actually meant on this side of where the double crochets are. That is where we are going to connect the back panel with the front panel. And this is how long your back panel should be. Well, for your assigned row, if you're making a bigger one, it's obviously going to be wider. And if you're making a smaller one, it's going to be smaller than what I have right here. To create the front panel, starting off with the same number of chains that you made with the back panel. So I chained 82, and we're going to repeat the same steps from rows 1 to 5. These are the first 5 rows that you should be repeating until a specific row to be continuing on the neckline of the front panel. So after you have met the specific row, which I'll leave in the description box below. Okay, so here I have my 30 rows completed. Remember that I am doing the medium size. So now we're going to start to create the neckline shaping. So you should have ended off, whatever size you're making, you should have ended off with 1 slip stitch row. Now we're going to create the neckline shaping, and we're going to chain 1 to create a new row, and we're going to back loop slip stitch in the row until we have 9 stitches left in our row. And that is going to be a decrease in the row so that it's like a perfect loop, because we're going to be making a neckline ribbing to finish it. Okay, so here I have my 9 stitches left, and we have to turn our work, and then we are going to chain 1 and slip stitch into all the stitches until the end of the row. Okay, so now that you are done with that row, as always, you should always slip stitch into the stitch of the last row, turn, and then we are going to chain up 2 to make the double crochet row, as we already have our 3 slip stitch rows completed. And we're going to double crochet, back loop, double crochet into all the stitches until the end of the row. Okay, so now that you've completed your double crochet row, turn and chain 1, and we're just going to repeat the back loop slip stitch row until the last stitch of the row, and then you're going to slip stitch into the last stitch as we have been doing. Okay, so now that you completed that first slip stitch row, turn and chain 1. And for this row, we are going to back loop slip stitch into all the stitches until we have 3 stitches left in the row. Okay, so now that you have your 3 stitches left in the row, you're going to turn and chain 1. And we're going to slip stitch until the last stitch of the row and slip stitch into the stitch. We're going to back loop slip stitch, into the last stitch of the row. Okay, so now that you've completed your 3 slip stitch rows, we're going to now create 2 chains after turning, and then we're going to create the back loop double crochet row, which is, this row is I think number 7, and then we're going to back loop double crochet until the end of our row. Okay, so now that you've finished your double crochet row, turn and chain 1. And for this 8th row, we're just gonna do the basic back loop slip stitch row. We're just gonna do the back loop slip stitch row into the last stitch of the row and slip stitch into that last stitch. And then we're going to continue with the 9th row. Okay, so now to start on the, I think it was 9th row, can't remember correctly, turn and chain 1, stitches until you have 2 stitches left in the row. To start row 10, we're going to create the turn and chain 1 back loop slip stitch row. So just back loop slip stitch to all the stitches until the last stitch of the row, and then slip stitch into the stitch, and then turn and chain 1 as we have been doing for this whole pattern. Here is a progress of what your decreases should look like. And now we're going to create the base double crochet row, and we're going to turn and chain up 2, and we're going to back loop. Okay, we're going to back loop double crochet. Oops, that's a half double crochet, sorry about that. Back loop double crochet into all the stitches until the end of the row. Okay, so now that you've completed your 11th row, this is row 12, turn and chain 1, repeat the back loop slip stitch and repeat the same steps that we have been repeating of the double crochet, back loop double crochet row, and the 3 slip stitch rows from row 12, which is this one, until row 14, and you should get a nice long fitting so that we can then create the increases and make it even and finish off the front panel. This is what your decrease row should look like. And now we're going to create row 15 by turning and chaining up 2, and we're going to do the back loop double crochet row and until the end, back loop slip stitch row until the end of the row. For row 16, you're going to repeat the back loop slip stitch row until the last stitch of the row, and slip stitch into the last stitch, and then turn and chain 1. This is what your completed decrease shape should look like. Now on row 17, we are going to create the increase. So for row 17, turn and chain 1, and back loop slip stitch into all the stitches until the end of the row. Hey guys! Okay, so now that you're at the end of row 17, we're going to chain up 3 because this is going to be the beginning of our increase. So now that you have your 3 chains, turn. Okay, so now that we've turned, you're going to go into the second chain from the hook and slip stitch into it. Make sure that your chains are twisted, and slip stitch into the other chain, and then slip stitch into all the stitches until the last stitch of the row, and slip stitch into the stitch to finish off row 18. Turn and chain up 2. Repeat the back loop double crochet row. Until the end of the row. For row 20, turn and chain 1. Repeat the base slip stitch, the back loop slip stitch row till the end of the row. To start row 21, turn and chain 1. Repeat the same back loop slip stitch row until the end of the row. Now that you've reached the end, slip stitch into the third chain from the hook. Make sure your chains are twisted. There we go. Sorry. And then slip stitch into the rest of the chains. And then back loop slip stitch into the rest of the stitches until the end of the row. To start row 23 of the neckline shaping, turn and chain 2, and repeat the back loop double crochet row until the end of the row, and make sure to go into the chains as well. For row 24, repeat the base back loop slip stitch row. Repeat the base back loop slip stitch row until the end of the row. To start row 25, turn and chain 1 and back loop slip stitch into each stitch until the end of the row. Once you're at the end of the row, make sure to chain 10. Once you have those 10 chains, turn. Then we are going to slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, which is the 9th chain. And slip stitch into all the chains. Also make sure your chains are twisted. Once you have that done, slip stitch into each stitch across until the end of the row. For row 27, turn and chain up 2. Then repeat the back loop double crochet row until the end of the row. And make sure you go into the chains as well, because that is where our increase, because this is what it should look like right now with your increase, decreases, and increases. Okay, so now that you've completed your last row of the neckline shaping, from here on out, you're just gonna turn and chain 1 to start the new row of the slip stitch row. So now that you have completed your neckline shaping, now you're just gonna keep on making the same rows from row 1 through 5, the base back loop double crochet row, and the 3 rows of back loop slip stitches to get the same amount of rows as you have in the back panel. So to make sure to finish off the front panel in the same amount of rows from your back panel. And I'll show you guys what that looks like, and I'll show you guys how to finish that off. So here I have my completed front panel from starting from over here with our increase to the neckline all the way to the end of where I ended off my back panel. So as I said before, that you should always end with the same amount of rows in your back panel, and always make sure that you are ending on a back loop sides end off. So just chain 1 after finishing all your back loop double crochets, of course. Chain 1, and then as I said, we are going to be pulling a very long strand of yarn, so make sure to pull off a lot of yarn, because this is the strand that we are going to use to sew on the side of the back panel with the front panel. So get about a length of how long your side is, and then you can cut it there. It can be a little bit longer, of course. It's going to double in size, but it's always good to make sure that you have enough yarn to sew both sides on. So I'll cut it and then I'll show you guys my two panels together. Okay, so here I have my back panel in front of my front panel, and now I'm going to show you which side is the right side and the wrong side, because for when we are going to be sewing on these panels together, this side, the right side of the front panel should be facing you, and then the back panel should be facing the wrong side. So to know the right side, you just like few bumps of where the slip stitch rows are, so that's when you know that that's the right side. If you have a slit side that doesn't have any like bumps or anything, then that's the wrong side. So you should be able to know that to be able to sew on your parts together without any mistakes. So now I'm going to show you guys how to make the sleeves. Okay, so now to create the sleeves, remember that I am making a medium size, so don't get don't confuse yourself, because I'm going to be, if you're making the medium size, then just follow along. If you're going to be making a different size, look into the description box to look for the specific number of chains that we're going to make for the sleeves. So create a slip knot, and then I'm going to be chaining 69. Okay, so now that you're done with your chains, now we're just going to slip stitch into the second chain from the hook. Sorry. Slip stitch into it, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next 11 chains. And this will create a like cuff around the wrist, and then after that it's going to be the sleeve. So it's going to be like a nice stretchy section and ready to fit around your hand. Okay, so you should have 12 slip stitches in the beginning total. So then you're just going to double crochet into the rest of the chains until the end of your chain. From rows 2 to 4, we're going to repeat the back loop slip stitch row. So turn and chain 1 after completing the double crochet row, and then we're just going to back loop slip stitch for the 3 rows until the end. Okay, so now that you're done, you're going to turn and chain 1, and then you're going to repeat the back loop slip stitch into the first 12 stitches, so make sure to count those, and then you're gonna back loop double crochet after finishing the 12 back loop slip stitches. So this is what your starting of the sleeve should look like. You should have your double crochet row, and then your 3 rows of the back loop slip stitch rows, and then your back loop double crochet row. So you're going to repeat rows 2 to 5, which is this section, and you're going to repeat this section until specific row. For the medium row, for the medium size of the sweater, you're gonna end your sleeve side rows until row 57. I'm pretty sure we are gonna be always ending in a double crochet, back loop double crochet row, so just make sure when you are like almost the end. And I'll show you guys what that looks like, and then yeah, I'll see you guys at the end. Alright, so here I have my completed sleeve right here. Here it is, complete, just like that. And as I told you guys that you should be ending on a back loop double crochet row, that is actually correct. You should always end on a back loop double crochet row in any of the pieces, either a sleeve, a back panel, or front panel. And then after you are finished with your row, chain one and then leave a long strand of yarn to sew the sleeve together, which is what we're going to do right now after you have completed 2 sleeves. So repeat the same steps to make 2 sleeves, and I'll show you guys right now how to put the sleeve together. So as I showed you guys before, that the bumpy side of the sleeve or any of the pieces is the right side, and if it has no bumps, then that's the wrong side, and that's what you want right here, because we are going to be sewing it together having the wrong side facing you, so that when you flip it inside out, outside in, inside out, you should have the right side facing you, and a seamless piece put together. Don't make the mistake of having the right side facing you and sewing it together that I made once. You want to make it again. So here we are going to sew together having the wrong side facing you. And here I have my needle on my yarn, and I am going to start from, that's the other end where we threaded our chain. I'm going to start from here, and then you guys can always do whatever way of sewing everything together. I just like doing it this way. I'm not sure what it's called, but you just put it like back and forth through your piece, not like over and under, nothing like that. You just go in and go through and just pull. And so you're going to want to keep doing that all the way until the end where you have your like cuff sleeve, something, or like something for the wrist. It's like a waistband or something. I'm not sure what it is. I don't know what to call it. But just keep doing that and do that for the 2 sleeves, and then I'll get back to you guys when I have that, and we can sew the front panel and back panel together. Okay, so here I have my 2 sleeves completed. I sewed them all together. As you can see, this is where the seam is. I flipped it inside out. So this is what the seam should look like when it's flipped inside out, and this is what it should look like when it's inside out. And for when we are going to be sewing them out, I'm just going to flip them inside out again, like that, so that the seam is showing. And then when we have the whole sweater sewed all together, the seam, we're going to flip it inside out again, and the seam should be inside. I'm going to show you how I'm going to be sewing the front panel and back panel together. Okay, so here I have my front and back panel. side towards me. And here I also have my yarn needle, which will also need. And then I have my front panel facing the wrong side towards me. So how the front side of the back panel towards you, and then place the front panel wrong side facing to you on top of the back panel, so that when we flip it inside out, it's all in the right side. And if you want it with a much more even look, make sure to use like stitch markers, like how I'm using right here, to like line up as good as possible the stitch marker, the slip stitch areas together. I tried my best on that, so, and then I put them together with stitch markers so that I didn't like mess up on anything. And then I'm gonna be using the extra yarn strands to sew these top parts together, and then we'll sew on the sleeves after we have this together. So I'll show you guys that right now. Okay, so here I have my right side, my right corner. I also took off the stitch markers since we're going to be sewing this side first, so that I can show you guys. So I have my yarn needle onto my yarn, and I'm just going to be, I'm just going to like take this strand off so that I can sew it into the what's it called, sweater, because I'm going to use that for the sleeve area on the side. So I'm just going to be sewing it like back and forth, just like how I'm showing you right now, just like that. Keep doing that until I hit the other side. I'll show you what that looks like after. Okay, so here I finished with the back and forth sewing, and now I have reached the corner end right here, and since I have extra yarn and don't want to just cut it off and make sure that it's all nice and sewed, I'm gonna go like over and under. I think this has a specific name, but I don't know what it's called. So I'm just gonna go like over it again, like that, over and under, just like that. And then once I hit this corner right here, I'll just cut it off. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side as well. So I'll show you that when these two front tops are complete. Okay, so here I have my two shoulder sides complete, and now I am going to show you how I'm going to be sewing on the sleeves onto the side. Okay, so here I have my yarn my needle onto my yarn, and I have placed my sleeve next to my stitched panels, and I flipped my sleeve inside out so that when we flip it, it's going to be all on the right side, and it's going to be the seam inside, and we will have no mistakes on the outside. So if you have the yarn piece end at the bottom over here on this end, on the bottom, you're just going to be stitching the sides first, and then work your way up to the sleeve. But since my yarn end ended up on so I'm gonna work the sleeve, the bottom of the sleeve first, and then once I get to the edges on the side, I'll then work my way up to this above of the sleeve, because it's only going to be the bottom that's going to be sewed, and so I have to work myself up to this part. So as I did with the shoulders, I'm just gonna sew it on any lace right here. It doesn't really matter. So I'll sew it like that, and I'll have to flip it. Probably I'll have to flip it to the other side, but I really don't know how to explain it. Just repeat the same steps that I did with the shoulder sewing, so that you have around the same kind of result with the sleeves. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like once I have my 2 sleeves complete. Okay, so here I have my sweater completed. I flipped it inside out, and this is the result. Here I have the seams, which we have we don't see them, so that's very good. Yippee, we finished the sweater. But now we still have this last part to do right here, which is going to be a collar like kind of thing. To create the ribbing for the neckline, we're going to create a slip knot. Insert our hook and chain up 7. Now we are going to slip stitch into the second chain from the hook. So you guys should already know how to slip stitch, and then slip stitch into the rest of the chains. Now that you're done, turn and chain 1, and we're gonna back loop slip stitch into all the stitches to the end of the row. You're gonna repeat the back loop slip stitch. You're gonna repeat the back loop slip stitch until it measures the whole neckline shaping of your sweater, because this is the ribbing that's going to go around it in order to cover all of the little corners and little staircases that it has. So make sure to have a good amount of measurement of how long it's gonna be, and I'll show you what my ribbing looks like in the end. Okay, so here I have the ribbing onto stitch mark onto the neckline, so that I have a placement of where I am going to be sewing it onto. And this ribbing is a bit smaller as opposed to the ribbing for the bottom of the sweater. Here's an example. Here's what I have worked on, and I'll get to this ribbing a bit later. But right now, I'll be showing you how I'm going to be sewing this ribbing onto the neckline. So I'm going to be using this piece as an example. So once you have your ribbing, I'm going to be using this ribbing that I have worked on right now as an example to show you how to place your ribbing on the neckline. So you're going to fold your piece in half once you have it complete, and you're going to go into the middle right here in between these 3. If you can see, this is the middle one, and you're going to place your piece like that, and then fold it like that. You're just going to want to like wind around it a little bit, and then stitch mark it into place so that you don't have to keep on like moving it. And now I am going to show you how I'm going to sew it together. Okay, so I've turned to the back so that I can get a better grip of where I am going to be sewing it. I'm gonna unclip this, and starting from where I ended, I'm going to do one of the sewing methods that I used on the sleeves. So go over here, use that, and just keep repeating that all around. Alright, so here I have the body ribbon complete. It's stitched onto the sweater. And this ribbing is actually optional, so it's your choice to put it, or if you don't want to, that's completely fine. But for those of you who are wanting to add this ribbing to the bottom of your sweater, it's practically like, it's exactly the same as the ribbing from the neckline shaping, this one right here. And instead of I think we changed 7, so then we had 6 stitches in total, you would be chaining 9, and you would be left with 8 stitches in total. So chain 9 and then slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, and then you would have 8 stitches in total. And that's how you would start off with the body ribbing, just the same steps as we did with the neckline ribbing. And then crochet all the way around this length of your sweater, and to stitch it on, it would be the same steps as we used for the neckline ribbing. So it's very simple. I also recommend washing your sweater in delicate, of course, or you can hand wash it and then leave it out to dry, and it comes out perfect. Just make sure if you have any like loose strands of yarn, you can always just fix it so that it's not noticeable. And there you have it, everyone. That's it for this video. This is the result of my crochet ribbed sweater. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you all in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.